Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer, an acronym for Bind, Torture, Kill, is an infamous American serial killer who terrorized Wichita, Kansas, from the 1970s through the 1990s. His real name is Dennis Lynn Rader, and he was born on March 9, 1945, in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Dennis Rader was the kind of neighbor you'd never suspect of harboring dark secrets. He was the eldest of 4 brothers in a seemingly normal family. Growing up in Wichita, Dennis was quiet, a bit withdrawn, and seemingly ordinary, a boy who blended into the background. But even as a child, Dennis exhibited signs that something was deeply wrong. He found pleasure in torturing animals and developed a fascination with bondage, often imagining women tied up and helpless. These early fantasies were the seeds of something much darker that would grow inside him. After graduating high school in 1963, Rader attended Kansas Wesleyan University but dropped out after a year. He enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, serving from 1966 to 1970. His time in the military was unremarkable, and after his discharge, he returned to Wichita. He married Paula Dietz in 1971, and they had 2 children. To everyone who knew him, Dennis was a devoted husband and father. He worked various jobs, eventually landing a position as a compliance officer in Park City, a suburb of Wichita. In this role, he was known for being strict, sometimes even petty, about enforcing city regulations. But behind this facade of normalcy, Dennis Rader was leading a double life. On January 15, 1974, Dennis Rader's inner demons could no longer be contained. He selected his first victims, the Otero family. The Oteros were a well-liked family in their neighborhood, and Rader had been watching them for some time. Early that morning, he broke into their home. He had carefully planned the attack, bringing with him a hit kit that included a cord, tape, and a knife. Inside the house were Joseph Otero, his wife Julie, and their 2 youngest children, Joseph Jr. aged 9, and Josephine, aged 11. Rader methodically subdued the family, binding their wrists and ankles with ropes. He strangled Joseph first, then Julie. Young Joseph Jr. was next, but Rader took his time with Josephine. He hanged her from a pipe in the basement, taking pleasure in watching her suffer. Before he left, he took a few personal items as trophies, tokens of his horrific crime. The Otero murders shocked the community. Wichita had never seen anything like it. The brutality of the crime was terrifying, but what was even more unsettling was the fact that there seemed to be no motive. The Oteros were not wealthy, nor did they have enemies. Their murder appeared to be completely random, which only added to the fear. In October of that same year, Rader struck again. This time, his victim was Catherine Bright, a young woman who lived alone. Rader broke into her home and waited for her to return. When she did, he attacked her, binding and stabbing her multiple times. Her brother, Kevin, happened to visit during the attack and was also assaulted but managed to survive. Catherine, however, did not. Over the next few years, Dennis Rader would kill more women, each time refining his methods. He began to communicate with the police and the media, sending taunting letters in which he referred to himself as BTK, an acronym for Bind, Torture, Kill. In his letters, he described in gruesome detail how he stalked, captured, and murdered his victims. He even sent the police a poem titled, "Oh, Death to Nancy," referring to his victim Nancy Fox, whom he had strangled in 1977. Rader's letters were filled with puzzles, codes, and cryptic messages. He enjoyed playing a game of cat and mouse with the authorities, believing himself to be smarter than the police. He took great pride in the fact that he could kill and then go back to his normal life, undetected. For nearly 3 decades, Dennis Rader led this double life. By day, he was a loving husband, father, and churchgoer, active in his community. He was even the president of his church council. But by night, he was BTK, a sadistic killer who derived pleasure from the suffering of others. The police were baffled. Despite his many letters and the clues he left behind, Rader managed to evade capture. His ability to compartmentalize his life was chilling. But as the years went by, Rader grew restless. He missed the thrill of the kill, the attention his letters brought him. In 2004, after a long period of silence, he couldn't resist reaching out again. This time, however, his arrogance would be his undoing. He sent a floppy disk to a local television station, believing it to be untraceable. But forensic experts quickly identified that the disk had been used at Rader's church and traced it back to him. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader was arrested. The evidence against him was overwhelming. During his interrogation, he confessed to the murders with a cold, detached demeanor, describing each killing in meticulous detail. There was no remorse, only a chilling matter-of-fact recounting of his crimes. In court, Rader pleaded guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder. During his sentencing, he described each of his murders in horrifying detail, as though he were recounting the events of someone else's life. The lack of emotion in his voice was disturbing. On August 18, 2005, he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms, with a minimum of 175 years in prison. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, would never again see the outside world. Today, Rader remains in the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. His case has become a grim study in the psychology of serial killers, a man who could maintain the facade of a normal life while harboring such darkness within. Dennis Rader's story is a haunting reminder that sometimes, the most dangerous monsters are the ones who look just like everyone else. This story outlines Dennis Rader's life, his methodical and horrifying crimes, and the eventual capture that ended his reign of terror.